I'm Marcus with German Performance Solutions.
And I'm Jose Mercado with Merc Racing here with Marcus to do the installation.
Yeah, so we're going to go into how to install the split-second controller on the MPI and step-by-step on which wires you need to connect to, and then also how to test to make sure that you're connected properly so that the tuner can come in and tune the MPI.
Awesome.
All right, so the first step that we want to discuss is some of the pitfalls that we have when doing these installs. The first thing you want to do is make sure that the battery is disconnected. You don't want to be working with live voltage while you're doing this install, especially since this is a computer and you could fry components and that just makes nobody happy. Then we're going to go into the actual controller themselves. We have a split-second V versus a split-second P. And so the difference between the two, the V uses a voltage map sensor type. And what that does is you need to tie into your own map sensor, which on the supercharger is right here on the Merc Racing and on the OEM is on the side. The P has a map sensor integrated into the controller itself right here, and you plug into P2 and leave PT1 open to atmosphere. And so what that does is it has its own sensor. If you have a boost tap right at the bypass valve, you can just run that over to wherever the controller is, and you don't need to do any of the wiring for the map sensor. Now we're actually going to go into the different wires that you need to connect up. So the first one's pretty simple. You have the battery positive, which is a switched 12 volt. Then the next one's battery negative, which is just your chassis ground. Then you have your ECU signal ground. You have your engine speed. The external load voltage input, it's optional. We don't use that. Same thing with the air temperature sensor. We won't be using that. We won't be using the external AFR meter. We're not going to be using the switch to ground to select the table B, and we're also not going to be using this relay coil. And then these right here, those are the ones that go to your injectors, which are right here. So there's really not much additional wiring there. So really, you only have 4 wires to wire this in completely. Another big pitfall of the ECU signal ground is that if you don't put that in properly, for whatever reason, the split-second controller will open the injectors all the way 100%, and you will flood your engine completely with fuel, which could damage your engine, or if you're lucky, just stall the engine completely. And then another thing to mention, this switch to ground to select B table, you want to make sure that this wire is completely covered in insulating tape, because what this does is when it touches ground, it switches in the controller to the table B fuel. And so you do not want that to happen, since we will only be working with table A anyways. So you want to make sure that you put some electrical tape over that to prevent any sort of grounding. So on the pressure controller on the P, the PT1 connects to your intake manifold. That's where you get your boost. So it would connect to your boost tap that you have on your bypass valve. And then the PT2 is left open to the atmosphere. All right, so one of the first steps you do, you want to make sure that you remove this cowl. You have 2 clips on both sides that you remove, and then you just pull up gently and put it off to the side. And then the 2 connectors that we need to get to on the engine side is right here where you have a sensor, and then right here where you have the map sensor on the supercharger. So we'll need to remove those, and to do that we need to remove this intake. All right, so the next step after you remove the intake, you want to remove these 2 connectors. So you press on this little tab here, pull up, press on this tab and pull out. On the OEM supercharger, of course, this is going to be over here, but for right now on the Merc Racing, it's at the front. Then you want to snake this under, and you want to remove your ignition coil harness here. So press on all the tabs and pull down. Of course, you have to remove these screws first before you do that. And then you need to go to the map sensor connector right here. And so you want to get a screwdriver and very gently push up on it see if I can get my finger here.
Usually, yeah, if you go on the other side and just flip it over, it usually comes right off.
Yeah. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So you flip that out. You go on the bottom, same thing. There you go. And that gives you access to all the wires there. You also want to do it right here. All right, so on this one, you just pull back right here and right there as well. And then it just comes apart. And so this gives you access to the wires that you need to splice into for the split-second controller to get the right signals. Then you're going to move down here, and you're actually going to also remove these tabs, because that allows you to run your wire through here, through this channel, and then back to wherever your split-second controller is. All you have to do is press on this back right here, and then pull it apart. And that actually loosens the connector. There we go, just like that. There we go, like that.
Oh, fine
one
plastics.
broke. Fine plastics.
So they're exposed to heat all the time, and they're hard and brittle.
Yeah, plastic and engine bay. Never been my favorite. There we go. So one of the things I like to do, because this is a mess of a harness, and most of these, you don't even need most of these wires, I actually like to grab some electrical tape and put some tape around each of the wires that I do need. So for example, this red one is for your positive. Then you have this black one right here. This is for your negative. And then you have your black with yellow stripe, which I believe this is your ECU signal ground. And then you have your yellow with black stripe, which is your TAC signal, your RPM signal. So these are the four you need. These you don't need. All right, so we missed something earlier. This external load voltage input right here. This is actually for the voltage style controller. This green wire needs to connect to your map sensor. So just a quick edit on that. All right, and so I also put electrical tape on this one that I forgot to mention earlier. So now you have all 5 wires. And so then you can take the split-second controller, you can put it back here for the time being. We'll secure it later, along with these wires that I zip tied. And then you also want to go ahead and plug in the connector for the injectors that are underneath the supercharger. That was run up through here from behind the supercharger, where we routed it behind there. And then you plug it in, and that one's simple enough. Now you want to take these, and the ones that need to go here, we have power and we have ground, the black and red. Those don't need to go back there. They need to stay behind the firewall here. So you'll route those back there for the time being. And then we have the green, which is your map sensor, and yellow and black one that needs to go to your camshaft one. And this black and yellow one will also stay behind the firewall. So these 2 wires will go right here along this harness, and then jump over and go along this harness, and then go into each individual wire right here. All right, so we had to cut this heat shrink that was back here so that we can get a little bit more wire harness, because we need to make it all the way up here, and we were running into length issues. Let's see. Yeah, we have plenty of length.
Plenty now. Yep.
So now we insert it in here. This is always extremely tedious to get a wire to go back in here, but it makes it look so much better. All right, so I cut a piece of electrical tape that I'm just gonna pull around here just to connect the piece that's gonna go along this section here until it gets to the fuel, or excuse me, the injector harness. We really just want to make sure that we protect the wires from this coolant pipe that's right here.
Yeah. So pretty much we got a extra piece of that sheathing and covered the two wires. That was not there before. It's a little tricky with the space being so tight.
It really is. So we went from putting these wires in, we switched gears, and we went ahead and tried to find the 12-volt keyed positive signal for us so that we can go ahead and put that in and get the split-second controller powered up. And so if you look right here on the B8.5, you have this awesome module right here. We went and took a needle and put it into the pins so we can check which one is the keyed positive 12 volt, and we found that right here, if Jose can get it there,
Yep,
yeah,
got it. Yeah.
is the positive keyed. It is a black wire with a blue stripe, and so we will be tapping into that. On the B8s, my B8 does not have this. You'll have to use this exact same procedure with the needle to figure out where you can get a keyed positive source. All right, so we went ahead and put the two lug connectors onto the black one, which is your ground, and then your black with the yellow stripe, which is your ECU ground. And so you're going to take this black one, you're going to loop it around, and you're going to go on this nut right here. You can pick any ground that you want. It's not necessary for you to go there. We found it convenient to go right there just because of all of the other wires that are already there. It's a 10 millimeter. All right, so we went ahead and put a sheath on this as this one runs over. This is the black wire with a yellow stripe on it. It's going to our ECU ground that's over there. So we're gonna run it underneath all of this along the back firewall. And then we're going to get to this ECU ground. This is a 10 millimeter stud right here, acorn nut that you loosen. Now you want to make sure you have your battery disconnected because this causes quite a few issues. You remove that, put it off to the side, and you reinstall. Let's see, make sure we get the angle right on this. There we go. So there's a little plastic ring that's around this.
Let me see.
And they have little slots in them. Let's see if we can zoom in on that at all. You can kind of see right where my fingernail is. You want to make sure that your connector goes through one of those slots so that it sits completely flush, because otherwise you're going to have air gaps between it and it's not going to make good contact. So then you go ahead and put the acorn nut back on, and you tighten it back down. And now that's our ECU ground, and we're ready to move forward with the rest of the install. So we put what you couldn't see earlier, we went ahead and put the black wire, the ground right here to this stud. And it does a good job. All right, so we showed you how to install the wires for the positive ground and then ECU ground. So now we're going to move to the connectors here. So we already did a little bit of a science experiment to make sure that we got the correct one. But essentially on the map sensor, you want pin 4, and there are numbers written on this. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you want the 4th one. And then on the cam sensor here, you want pin 2. You want this center pin right here. And it is also numbered. And so we pulled those two, and what we did is we went over here, we powered up the Tuner Pro RT, and we revved the engine to make sure the engine speed was correct. And then we also made sure that our pressure was correct when we connected up to the controller here. The easiest way to find the software is if you go to the Split Second website and get the additional controller instructions. There's actually a link to the Tuner Pro RT software, and so you can download it for free, and that's how you actually tune the Split Second controller. So that's an easy way, and it's also why we initially did not solder this in. It's an easy way to see, to make sure that we got the correct wires and that we're tapping into the correct position. And so the next step for us is to wire everything in properly, solder it, and then button everything up. All right, so we went ahead and soldered our connections here. And so you can see our shrink wrap that we put in there. We went ahead and plugged it back in on both sections. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go here and reinstall this connection, and it really just clips back together just like that. And now everything is tucked away as if no one had ever been in there before. And so then the next step we do, we go ahead and put that back on, where the wires are run through here like we did before, and it runs up here. So we go ahead and put this back on. And it just clips into place. Super satisfying. Make sure you get all of the clips, even the ones on the bottom. And there we go. Now that install is done. All right, so this next step, we're gonna go talk about how to connect to the Tuner Pro. So the first thing you need to do is you need to grab the USB cable that came with the Split Second controller, and you need to connect it to the Split Second controller right here. And so when you connect it, you see it flashes red about 1 time a second. That is good. That means it's connected properly. All right, so then here you go and open up Tuner Pro. And Tuner Pro is a free software, and so unless you pay for it, you have to wait until this screen is done. And when the countdown reaches 0, you can click continue. The first thing you need to check is down here in the corner. It says hardware AIC2-V. That's the hardware that we just installed. It needs to match the hardware that you have on your Split Second controller. If you purchase the P, this needs to say P. But what you're really looking for is that this hardware does not say not found. If it says not found, you need to go check your connections, make sure everything's connected, maybe restart Tuner Pro. Then when you come up here, right under the window to connect, you click this button that says Enable, Disable Emulation, and you'll see down here in the left corner, now there's a green button that says Emulating. Then you also go up here and you select Acquire Data, Disconnect. When you do that, you see down here DA connected, and you can see the gauges are now moving. Now you fully have connected to the Tuner Pro split second controller.